Okay, yeah, we are welcome to the demo session. We are going to try out some of those things we've talked about in the training class. And I advise that you get your system ready and launch the SQL Management Studio that you have installed in the previous class. So I'm going to share my screen now and then we'll be creating some scripts together. Sorry. Okay, so to launch our SQL Management Studio, we just simply need to go to our Start window, right? Then look for the SQL Management Studio folder. After installing your SQL Management Server and Studio, you are going to have it as two separate folders. One is the management server itself, the database management server itself. Then the other contains tools, of which SQL Management Studio is one of the tools. There are many other tools that are also here that are not going to be covered in this training course, but we are just going to be using the SQL Management Studio as a platform tool for launching the database management server. So we stopped at creating and launching the database server. So let's call it off now from here. Remember, there are two ways to use your database management server. You can use it on the command prompt, which is very boring to do, but there is a GUI interface, which is a management studio that helps you to write interactive scripts, and you also have some click wizard options that you can use to create your database objects and your data within your database. So just simply connect. You can connect in two ways. Let me show that to us again. So you can connect as a logged on Windows user. So based on your current logon profile on your laptop, you can simply connect as Windows authentication. So you just come and click connect. Again, you can connect as a SQL Server authentication, but in this case, a login username and password must have been created for this user on the database system. This is very useful because remember we mentioned that SQL Management Studio allows you to have multiple users working on the database. So those multiple users can connect using their defined login name and password. And of course, they will be assigned to various roles as it relates to the kind of access they should have to the database. So you can connect this way. You put in a login name and password. Okay, so I'm going to close this. You can always call up your connecting Object Explorer using these two icons, right? So I'm just going to quickly explain the features of SQL Management Studio before we start creating data and objects. So you have your Object Explorer used for connecting to your database. You can also you can open multiple instances, right? So if I have another instance, I can connect to it here as well. I'm not sure this instance is working. I think I've deleted it, but let's see if it will connect. Okay, so you can actually have multiple instances created on your that you can connect on your database management studio, right? Let me cancel this. I've deleted that instance, right? Then I can close and open an instance here. So if I click disconnect, you can see that here is empty. To get back to my database, I'll just come back and connect back to it, right? So um, I can define many databases, right, within my database management server, right? And I can also define a new query file, right? So your SQL statements are usually written within a query file, and to access the query file, you click on new query. Then you can save your query files using the save icons. Then whenever you're working on a new query, you need to specify the database that that new query is to be executed on. So you can specify the databases here, right? Then these are general Windows menus, right? That are here in your management studio. You'll notice that the Windows menu all have the same um, um, what's it called? Menu buckets here. So it's just basically for you to create new query and some other functions there, which this training course will not cover. So having said all that, I would like us to bring in some data from Excel into our database so that we can have some data to work with. And to do that, we're going to be using a function or a tool within Database Management Studio. I think we all have the US regional sales data file that I sent to us in previous class. Just in case you don't have it, I will send it to you again through the chat. So we are going to import that data into our database management server. Okay, so this is the file. Yeah, you have it in your chat box now. You can download it. Okay, so let me open the file and explain again. So data in your Excel looks similar to tables defined in the database. And I told you that Excel is the knowledge of Excel is used in different times for different reasons in a data analytics process. Right. So sometimes you might have your data given to you in Excel format and you need to bring them into your database. Or you can have multiple Excel formats, multiple Excel files, and then it's better managed and manipulated within a database management. So you need to understand how to bring your data from your Excel into your database. Right. So looking at this Excel file now, right, you can see we have multiple sheets. So these multiple sheets are the whole of the Excel file is data collected on sales made within a region. So this data is stored in multiple sheets to show some kind of structure. So our main sheet is our sales orders sheet, which contains which contains um, records of all the sales made within a given period. So you can see sales order one made through in-store channel, gotten from this given warehouse at this procurement date. This is the order date. This is the shipping date of the item, the delivery date, the currency in which the order was made. Then you also have um, sales ID, which gives you information about the salesperson, customer ID, store ID, and you have the price on the other items, right? So unit price, unit cost, the discount that was applied for the order. So each record represents an order made, right? According to our training briefing, you can see that the order number uniquely identifies each order. So the order number looks similar to like your serial number, and it uniquely identifies each order. So if I'm looking for order 121, I know um, which order number it is, and I can easily get information about the order. Now, again, in this table, you can see that you have some columns that are telling you more information about the order. So for each of the record, I have like the column customer ID. So the customer ID will help me define the customer who made the order. But with the ID alone, I cannot be able to explain who the customer is, except I have customer table, because the information I really need is the customer name and some other demographic information about the customer. So customer ID in this table is a foreign key, right? Which explains to you that there's a customer table somewhere that will give you more information about this ID. So in this case, you then look for the customer table or the customer sheet. So you can see that in the customer sheet, we have the customer ID and then the customer name. So there's a link you can create. With this, you can create a link between customers, between sales orders table and customers table to say, okay, based on the ID given here, I can use that to go to my customers table and know who the customer is. So in this case, the order number one made by customer ID table was actually made by customer with this name, right? So this is in clear terms what foreign key and primary key means. Um, you also have those other tables that help defining those other things. Now, you would likely not have your information in this structured format given to you by your clients, but you need to then define those um, columns and information. You can do that easily in your database management system, but I just wanted to quickly explain to us the concepts using the Excel file. So back to the business of the day, let's import this data from Excel file into our database management studio. So download the file I've sent you, put it in a known location. Then afterwards, let's go to call up the utility that we'll use to import our file. Before you import the file, you need to create the database that would contain the tables. So each of these sheets are like tables. They'll be created as tables in your database management system. But you need to create your own database or use existing database to create your tables. So let me show you how to create your database. There are two ways to creating database. You can use the click method simply by right-clicking on your database folder, click New Database. So once I click New Database, it will pop up a window like this for me. Let me expand this so you can see it well. Right, so in this window, I'll then specify the name for my database. So let's specify the name as US Regional DB. Now, when creating your database name, avoid having space, right? Instead of space, you can have hyphen or you can have underscore. This is just a general name nomenclature. And then it's better to manage your database that way, right? So in my own case, I'm not going to have, I'm just going to create it as US regional DB, right? So when creating your database, two kind of files are created by default. The first type of file is called a data file, and the second one is called a log file. The log file is just a text kind of file that writes every action performed by the database management system and is actually very useful for debugging or for checking on errors that may occur within your database. Um, it's just a useful to have file. Many times when there are issues in the database management administrators will refer to the log file to find out what actually happened. The data file, of course, will contain your data records, your raw data, then your log file will contain logs. We call that logs, right? Don't worry about these other ones. These are just metadata information telling you about the file size and then the growth rate of your file size. Of course, as you continue to input data into your database, this file size will continue to increase. Um, then another interesting thing I want you to know is your defined path here. So this path I have here is a default path for storing my database files, right, in my file explorer. So this is where my database files and log files will be stored. So if I want to get this database, I want to make a copy or I want to um, take this database from one laptop or from one computer to another computer or to another server, this is the location where I will find it. You can, of course, change this location at the point of creating your data file by clicking on this simple icon here. Okay, so for this case, let's change the default location because this default location is in the C environment, and if peradventure I uninstall my SQL server, this folder as well will be deleted and I will lose my data. So I may not want to store my database in my default location. I may want to store it in another folder location where I can easily find it. So let me create a folder within my C drive. Let me just call the name US sales or US stock. Okay, let me say this a ShopRite, whatever, a ShopRite um, regional something. ShopRite project. So let's assume I'm working on a project for a sales merchant like ShopRite or Pick and Pay. So I want to have all my information in one folder and I've created a folder for it. So I can save my database for it within ShopRite project. So within ShopRite project, I want to have a database folder that defines the data for them. So data regional DB. Okay, so having defined the data folder, I can come back here to select that data folder. So I defined it in my C drive. Then I would look for the folder. So this is the folder here. You can see ShopRite project. because I define a subfolder and I want it stored in that subfolder, I'll just expand and pick on my subfolder. Right, so I've changed, with this now, I've changed the path for which my database is stored, and I must ensure that my data file and my log file is stored in the same location. So for this as well, I need to pick the same folder. Fine. So once this is completed and you are fine with the details of your database, you can simply click OK, not add. If you click on add, it will ask you to add another database. So you can do add to create multiple databases at the same time. So in my own case, I want to create just one database. So I say OK. Right, so I can see my database created. I have here's regional DB. Right, so I have subfolders within my database that are holding different database objects. The main one I want to look at is the tables folder. So all my table objects are defined within my table folder. I can as well create a table in my database using the click method or wizard by right-clicking on the folder and then I'll say new table. Right, so here I can define my table columns. Let me create a sample table here. So for a sales kind of application, let me create a table for staff. So let's assume that my table will have staff names, my staff names would be letters or characters. So in defining a table, you also need to define the kind of data that will be stored in the columns. So for staff name, of course, names will be formed by letters. So the data type you pick is what we call the character type of data, but in database management system, it's shortened to CHAR. So whenever you see CHAR or CHAR or whatever pronunciation you want to call it, it is simply letters. So you have CHAR as a back char. So the back char simply means that in memory, create this create a container for me that can hold up to 50 letters, right? But if the name is less than 50 letters, then recover the remaining memory space for the character. So this is a much more efficient way of actually storing character letters or character columns. So most times people use batch. You can also have the char. So the char is usually used in a case when you are sure of the when all the values will contain the same number of characters. A clear example is if you are storing mobile number here. Mobile number is not an integer value, right? It is a string value, but you know that all your mobiles might, if you are not storing mobile numbers across countries, if you are storing maybe for the same country and they are just mobile numbers, not landlines included, you can define that all your mobile numbers should be char 11, meaning that it must all contain 11 characters. So if it's less than 11 characters, it will not accept it. So this is like a default constraint defined on your data type. You have other types of data type, but I'm just going to concentrate on the popular ones that you need. You also have the bit type of data type. The bit type of data type is just for data values that can either be of two types. So it can either be true or false, can be one or zero, and then just in bits, one or two of the value. Then you have the Boolean data type. Okay, sorry, the bit is the same as Boolean. Yeah. So you define your bits in your database as true or false or one or zero. So it's the same thing as Boolean. You have the date data type, then you have the date time data type. The difference is just one will capture the time information, the other one will have just date information. Another common one is the float or decimal data type. They look similar. Um, floats, you can constrain your um, you can constrain and define the number of decimal values that your data type should have. But for your floats, any kind of decimal or float values would be accepted. You have the integer data type, which I talked about. So just to accept integer values, and so on and so forth. But those are the common ones that you would likely use. So when defining your table and your fields, of course, you need to specify the data type. So for staff name, our data type is Barker. I'm just going to increase my Barker type so I can increase it by from 50 to 100, saying that, okay, staff name, some people might have very, very long surname and so on and so forth. So I can change it to 100, saying reserve 100 character spaces for me. Of course, because I'm using VACA, if the name length is less than 100, it would still work efficiently. So you can define the null constraint as well in your column using this checkbox. So if I check it, it means it can allow empty or null values or not, right? So that's staff name. Then I can define, um, let's say, gender. I want to know the gender of the staff. So of course, like I mentioned, this in my case, I want either male or female, so I can use the bit value to define my gender. Then I can say, okay, I want to have the mobile number of my staff. I can use the char11 data type to define. Um, it can be empty. I may not have it. Okay, I don't want staff name to be empty. I can define their address of the staff. Um, so this would contain long text. So I can say Bacha 500 or more, right? Then lastly, I want to add a foreign key to this table. I can define an ID here, which I would supply the table later. So I can define the region ID. So I want to know which region the staff is actually uh, attached to, so I can have region ID. And of course, this will be int value, and this can be null as well. Okay, so once I've defined my columns, I can save. Right, so you would notice something else again within the column name definition for gender, mobile address, region ID. You don't have them in block brackets, right? So you have staff name in block bracket because there's a space between staff and names. And for the database management system to capture this column name properly, it has to put it in block, right? We sometimes avoid having space within our naming or database definitions, right? But peradventure, you must have a space. You have to enclose it within the block brackets. By the time we are creating our table using script, it will be clearer to us. So now that we've defined our table, we can just simply save our table and then fine. So I can call this staff table. Staff can only, plural staff is staff, so no need to put S. When creating your tables as well, you also want to give it a plural name so that it's just a naming convention that, okay, your tables are usually plural names because it is believed that they contain multiple records, right? So once I save this now, I will just expand on my tables and I can see my table created. So my table is created now. I can also add data into my table, right, using the click method. So I can just say, okay, right click and then edit my table. This way I can add stuff to my table. So let's say I have this staff name. Um, so I may, oh, sorry, bit true or false. Okay, my bit can only be true or false. No, I want male or female. So I'm going to go back and alter that. So let's say 369. So for my region ID, I'll just put a value. So you can see you can save a data value this way. Right. So this is a way we can create our database and create our tables. I'm going to go back to my Excel now because I want to import all the tables from my Excel into my database. Right, I've created a US regional DB and I want my tables to come in here. Right, so to bring in our data from the Excel, we are just simply going to use a tool in our database management system known as the import export file utility. So you set for your database management system. I have the folder here. Then you click on SQL Server import and export data utility. So click. Once you click, it's going to pop up a wizard that enables you to import your data. So you just follow the instructions. So I have the welcome window of the wizard here. So I'm just going to click next. Okay, so as you can see on the screen, I need to define the source of my data. Using this utility, you can bring data from any source into any source. So these are various options of where you can pick your data from. I can get data from Oracle, from SQL Server, from flat file. Flat file sources are things like your CSV files, right? You can bring data from your CSV or TXT files. You can even bring data from legacy applications like your Access DB. Then in this case, now we want to bring data from our Excel, right? Then you can also bring data from SQL Server to another SQL Server using this tool. So I can specify SQL Server. I can bring data from a SQL Server variant known as Analysis Server, right, from this as well. So you just come here and pick the applicable option. So in this case, we're going to pick Microsoft Excel. So of course, you need to link it to the file so that I can get the data from the file. You can specify where the file is stored here by clicking on browse. Then I'm going to simply pick my data. So I have my Excel file. Now, you can specify the version of your Excel file, but it would of course pick the default version here. But I can change the version if it's an older Excel file. Right, then if my first row contains column names, then I need to check this box. Of course, you can see that my first row for this contains column names. In some cases, you might just have, you might not have column names as your first row, but that's not a problem. If the first column is not defining your columns, then you uncheck this box so that you can pick all the values within your Excel sheet. So I'm just going to click next now. So I need to specify the definition, the destination rather. So the destination is where my data is going into. In this case, my data is going from Excel to my database management server. So I need to specify the destination here. So for this um, SQL Management Server, our destination is given by the native client 11.0. So you are going to pick this type. Then, of course, you need to authenticate that you can access that management server. Um, you can specify all the details. This is always similar to what you have in your Object Explorer. So the details are here. You can specify your if it's Windows authentication or if it's a SQL Server um, user rights that you have. Then, of course, you need to specify the database that your table will go into. So that was why we had to go back to our database to create the database. So we have created US Regional DB. Remember, we just created this some few minutes ago. So that's what I'm going to pick. Right. So I'll just click next. So here you have two options. It says copy data from one or more tables or views. That's talking about copying data from the source. Again, you can also specify the copy of your data using an SQL script. Let's say you want to manipulate the data you want to copy, then I can come here and write SQL script. So if I want to write SQL script for it, I'm going to click this option and click next, and then it will open a query window for me within the wizard to write my script. But I'm not going to use this option now. So I will go back to my first option and then click next. Right, so you can see that it's showing all the sheets from my Excel on my screen, and I can select the ones I want to copy, and I can also select everything if I'm interested in copying all the sheets. So on the left, you have source, which is your Excel, and it's showing the path to your Excel file. On the right, you have destination, which is your database, and it has given it a default database, a default table name. So we are going to go with this table name. We can, of course, change the table name if we decide we want to, but just ensure that you still have DBO dot then your table name. So I don't like the way my table name is showing the sheets as part of its name, so I'm just going to take out sheets from some of my table names. I'll take out the rest from my database. So, right, so let's just read for the first two. So I have customers table, products table. So it's going to bring everything from customer sheets data, create a table name called customers, and impute all the data. Right, so and do that as well for all the other sheets. So I'm just going to click next. There are some other things that you can do here. You can click on edit mappings and do some changes, right, to your source and destination. Of course, your source is showing you all the columns within a particular table, and then it's showing you the same column name. It will take the same column name, but I can change the column name and say, okay, I don't want this column name. I want you to change it into something else. So I can change my destination column name. I can change my source column name, and I can map them differently. Let's say I want sales channel to be created into a different, I mean, I want to get all the columns, but I don't want to get some columns. I can come here and say ignore. So if I say ignore, it will create the table without the sales channels column, right? But I want all my columns in this case, so I'm going to leave it. I can change my data type defined. I can change it to a different data type. So I can manipulate my data really from the edit mappings within the tool. So these are some other information. So if I check this, then it will drop and recreate the destination table. So let's say within my database, I have a table with a similar name. I can check this and it will delete that table and recreate this table and the data. So as you use this wizard, you get more familiar with it. So I'm just going to say, okay, here, I'm fine with all the information I have here. So I'm just going to click next. And I want it to run immediately. I can save it. I can uncheck this and ask it to run at a different time by saving it as an SSIS package. People who perform ETL processes do a lot of this. For example, let's say I want this data to be collected at a particular time of day, maybe at night or something. I can save and run it as a package. But now I want to run it immediately, so just click next and then we do finish. So you can see on the screen that the data is being copied from the source to the destination. The larger table is taking a while to copy, which is the sales table. But of course, you can see that it's copying. It contains 7,000 plus rows. We have the other ones as well copied. So with this success information, then I can go to my database and check. And of course, I'll find all the tables in there. So I'm just going to close this. Then I'm back to my database. I can right click on my tables and refresh. And of course, you can see your tables imported into your database. Right, so I have my customers table, I have products table, I have the other tables as well with their names. I told you that we are going to come here to change their names. So to change their names, just right click, then you can change. You can remove the quotes from the names, right? So just right click, rename, right click on the table, rename, then change the table name to reflect something different from the default name that's given it. So I can use this method to bring in additional information from other sources into my database. Now you'll notice that the table staff that I created on my database is still there, right? So I can have existing tables within my database and I can bring in existing tables as well from other data sources into my database, right? So now that we have interesting data in the database, we're just going to practice some more scripts like we've explained in our training class and see how to manipulate this data within our database. Sorry, I want to rename. So I'm going to right click, then rename. So this is a clear, interesting way of bringing data into our database. There are other ways too, which we'll treat in the class as we continue with SQL. Okay, fine. So I have my table names in a way that I like it. So we're going to write some scripts. And remember, we talked about two types of SQL statements. You can have the data definition statements and we can have data manipulation statements. Before now, we have been creating objects. We've created our database object, we've created table objects by simply right-clicking and following the user interface, doing click, click, click method. But now we want to create these databases and tables using scripts. So to do that, you would need a query file. So I'm going to call up a query file. Just simply click on new query, and then we can write scripts to do the same functions that we have done using our clicks. So I'm going to start with creating database. I'm To write SQL statements, you can also specify comments, starting off your comments with two hyphens, right? So comments help your script file to be descriptive, and it's always important that you know how to use them, especially when writing scripts, because sometimes you might have written a very long and extensive script and you come back to it some other time and you are not sure of what you were trying to achieve. But once you have descriptions in them, or if you are reading a script written by someone else and there are comments in them, it will help you to understand the script better. So to specify a comment, I'll simply use two hyphens, and then I can say script. I can write whatever I want. So statement, SQL statement to create DB. Okay, so I'm going to write a statement now to create a new DB. I already have US regional DB created. I'm going to create a new DB by simply writing create database. I can call it, let's see. So Telcom DB. Let's say I'm creating a database for a Telcom project, right? So I can just say create database Telcom DB. And as simple as that, once I run this, it will create a database for me. So you have your feedback messages in a window that is usually below your script file. So this would usually give you information about the scripts that you have run, so you can see commands completely executed. So if I come back on my databases and refresh, I can see my Telcom DB database created. Of course, it's an empty DB with no tables. So I have to create whatever tables I want to have in it. Right. Okay, before we go fine to creating databases objects, I also need us to understand the concepts of database creation and architecture. So as a data person, you need to sometimes define the storage for your data that you'll be collecting, right? So in our previous class, I think I talked about understanding the concept for which you want to define your database, right? So um, within that concept, there would be various subjects that are part of the concept that you want to collect data about. So, for instance, we're looking at telecoms now. So, in the telecom industry, in the telecom related project, what are the subjects that would be interacting within that concept? So, for instance, I'm going to have mobile users who are my customers. Then I'm going to have the details of the mobile phones, right? I'm going to also have things like, okay, base stations, right? So these are various subjects within that concept. So those subjects become like my tables, right? They become like my tables. And then the features about these subjects become like my columns, and then I can collect information about them. Another example is, let's say I'm working on a hospital project and I need to collect maybe existing data or new data about the hospital. So within an hospital, what are the subjects that, you know, interrelate there? There will be things like, okay, who are my patients? So I need to create a table for patients. Who are the doctors? I need to create a table for doctors. Who are the what are the hospital facilities like? Okay, well then what are the branches that that hospital can have. So these subjects form like your table information, or tables that you want to collect information about them. But the characteristics of each of these subjects, then you can define those as columns, right? So this is just a layman explanation of what creating a database architecture is like. Your database architecture must be well defined, and um, it should be well defined and well structured. If not, it's going to flaw your data collection, and it's also going to mess up the kind of data information you can have. So once you have your draft of your data architecture defined, then you can easily come and create the database objects for them. So I've created my telecoms DB. I'm working with the telecom concept. So within my telecoms DB now, I want to create tables for my various subjects. So for example, I'm going to create a table name customers. Oh, okay. So I don't want to use this click method because I already explained this before. I'm going to create my table now using SQL Script. So you have two options. You can create using the GUI interface. You can also create using SQL Script. So let's create using SQL Script, SQL statement to create table. So you simply use the create table command, which we also saw in slides. So create table, then you specify the table name.
Sorry, can I ask?
Yeah, please go.
Okay, how, I think I missed the point. How do we go to these SQL scripts? When you click, I know that you said right clicked on table to go to a new table.
Okay. You mean how did I get to where I'm writing this SQL script?
Yes.
Okay, you simply click on new query.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's continue. I'm writing an SQL script now to create a table instead of creating using this method, right? So just write the script, create table, then you specify the table name. So I want customers. I want to create my table as customers, right? So create table customers. Now, in creating a table, you need to define columns. So to define the columns, you have to open brackets, and within your bracket, you're going to define the columns. So it's a open and close bracket. So usually you just open the bracket and close it. Then within the bracket, you start defining the column. So what are the features or characteristics of these customers that I want to have their data for, right? So those are the things that will form your column name. So for every customer, I want to have their unique customer ID. It could be, I could create, let's say I'm using a customer list. So I could want my unique customer ID to be a serial number because I have something else that will still identify them. So I can say serial number. I can choose to name my column anything. So in this case, I want to name it serial number. Now I'm using a block bracket because my name contains a character, which is a slash character, but I actually want it to name this way. So my serial number, I need to define my column type. So just like we saw in creating the table using the click method, I'll define my column type as integer. SQL is not case sensitive, so you can write capital, you can write small letter, you can write it mixed. It doesn't mean. So integer, then I can define it as not null, meaning that I don't want any empty value. It must have a value. Now on my serial number, I can still define some more constraints, but I'll leave it at just not no constraint alone for now. So to define other columns, I'm going to specify a comma, then write the next columns. So serial number, I also want the customer surname. So I'm going to write surname. Surname is going to store text as characters. So I'm going to write varchar. So varchar 30 is fine. Not null. So I must have all their surnames. Then first name, varchar as well. Not null. Okay, initials. You should avoid missing the spelling. Initials can be varchar as well. So like Dr., Mrs., Prof, whatever initial. So I can have 4. 4 is fine. Then this can be null because it's not compulsory. I want to have their gender. Are they male or female? I would use a varchar here as well because I want it to be written out as male, female. So varchar 7 is fine. So if it's female, it will take 7 character spaces, and then if it's male, it will take 4 character spaces. Right? Then I want to have their age. Age will be integer. It can be null. And then okay, yeah, it can be null. I can define some constraints as well here. So lastly, I want to have the address. So because address is a keyword in database, and I want to use the column name as address, I can specify it in block. So I want to have address. I can have address as varchar 50. So we are just going to stop. You can have thousands of columns in a table name, depending on the kind of information you want to store. So once I have defined my table name and I've defined my columns and types and all that, I can simply
Before you run, can you look at the first name? I think the spelling is not correct.
Oh, which spelling?
First name. First after surname.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Okay. Don't mind me. The way you create
when you
it,
say
you
not
find
no, when you say not no, meaning there must be a value there, right? Is it not supposed to be empty? Is that what you mean by not?
Yes, yes. I'm going to demonstrate that to you when we try to insert some data. So once you have defined your table, you would just highlight it. To highlight it means that you should run just this command alone. Then you click on execute. Now, before you do that, you also need to check that you are in the right DB. For instance, if I am in test DB here and I execute, it will execute successfully, but it will create my table for me in test DB. So if I check on telecoms now, I'm not going to find the table there. I won't find the table there. Why? Because I created the table under test DB. If I check on test DB, I would find the table there. So this is the table I just created, customers, right? So that's just for us to note, because in weekday class, people.
Hello, please, instructor. Supposing this a query is executed under testDB, and then you go to execute it again under telecom, will it still duplicate there?
Yes, yes, and that's what I want to do now. So I'm going to execute again under telecom DB. Right, so it has executed successfully. If I check telecom DB now, just refresh, I will find my table. So my table is here. You can see, so this is a way of creating tables, right? So I've shown us how to create table using click, and also how to create it using SQL statements this way. Now, in my table, I noticed that, okay, for integer, for serial number, I want to have it as a primary key defined, right? Um, to define it as primary key, I can do it in two ways. I can do it from the table design. So I'll right click on table design, then come to the column, right click and say set as primary key. Right. So once you do this, it will set this column as primary key. Another method is to do it from our script, which I would prefer to do so as to show us. So I'm going to alter my table now to set primary key. Alter alter table to set primary key. So this is just a comment. So to write the script for it, you simply use the alter command. Remember, I said it's not case sensitive, it can be capital or small letter. So alter table, right? Then you specify the table name. I want to alter the customer's table. Most times, instead of typing the DBO dot blah blah blah, which takes time, you can just click on the table and drag it to your query file, and it will write the table name for you. So alter table. What I just need you to be familiar with is the syntax for writing SQL script. So you want to create database syntax. You want to create table syntax. SQL is very simple. It looks very English-like, right? So just get familiar with it, and it will become easy for you to use SQL. And you need SQL most of the time to manipulate your data and to work on your data generally. So alter table name. So I'm going to specify the primary key. So I would say primary key. Then I'm going to set the primary key. Oh, sorry, I'll say add primary key, because I'm asking you to add a new constraint to the table. So I'll set the primary key column. So in this case, it's serial number. For columns as well, you can just drag and drop the name. Right, so close bracket. Oops, sorry, close bracket. So once I do this now, execute, you can see it has executed successfully. Right, so if I go to check now, you can see it has put my key, my serial number as primary key. Right. So let's say I want to do data entry and I don't want to be entering serial number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and all that. So I can also set a column value, a default. I can set a column value for my serial number, right, using what we call the identity constraint. You can do that easily without writing the scripts from here, from the table design. Just click on serial number column, then come to the properties for that column. Then look for where you have identity specification, expand on it. So here where you have is identity, you just toggle on it. There's an imaginary drop arrow on that record, or you can just double click on it. Once you double click on it to go from yes to no, from no to yes. So double click on it to say yes. So once I do this and come out from here and click save, I can save on my table. Oh, okay. So we need to enable this option of changes to be prevent changes to be allowed, right? So to allow that, I think let's do this. We'll go to tables, properties, permissions. Okay, no, general. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Okay, let me do this again. Maybe because I already have data in it, that's why it's not allowing me to create it that way. So I'm going to delete the record in it. Okay, now I don't have data in it. Okay, let me see. Maybe that option is on the database. Prevent savings, permissions, this options.
Check permissions again.
Okay.
Something like this, permission for the public.
Where is that? Oh, okay, here. No, it's something like it will write it prevent savings changes. Then you say yes or no, something like that. I'll find it. If I can't find it now, I'll get back to us on it. So once that is unchecked, then you can save changes. Okay, I'll get back to us on it. Okay.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, yeah. So what I wanted to achieve here was to save this column so that I don't have to type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 serial number, and this is fine, but I am unable to save changes on my table for now. So we are going to toggle it back to no and just leave it as it is. So don't save changes. So we've created table using the script. We've also made changes on our table using this method. Let's put in some data on our table and check how these constraints would work for them. So let's do a table entry first using the click method and of course we'll come back to show how to use it on the script. So let's do edit, right? So here I'm going to specify serial number. So let's do 1. then specify surname. Specify surname and name, then specify this other information. Let me check on any of my constraints. Okay, so I said age can be null, gender must not be null. So let's say I didn't specify gender, but I specify age and I specify address. If I try to save this by going to the next file, gender not null, it shouldn't accept. Let's do it again. Or is this in? Okay, yeah, I know why. Now, a space.
You know, we will not save this.
It has saved because
That's it.
that's it. A space and a not null, they are different. So there's a space here, and because it's a text value that's accepted it, I'm going to do it again without putting a value. So this is a null value now because I didn't put anything. But in gender here, in the first row, I put a space. Right, so you can see that it's not accepting it, and it's giving you the reason. It says cannot insert value null into a column gender. So that brings me to, somebody actually asked this question in the previous class, that is there a difference between null and empty space? Yes, there is. So null means there's nothing, but because this is a string or a text column, right? A space is still accepted as a value. So, but a null is different from an empty string, right? So for me to save this, I need to specify a value. So let's say I specify value as female, male in this case. So you can see how constraints work on tables to ensure that certain values are accepted or not accepted. You would appreciate this better if the database is then connected to an application that is storing the data or retrieving the data from it. So this is a way of, inserting values using the click method. Now let's show how to do it using scripts. So the same way you inserted into table, you can also insert using scripts. So I'm just going to write a script for it. So to do that, you are going to use the insert script, and the syntax is simply insert into, then you specify the table name. So I'm inserting into my customers table. Then sometimes you might not need to specify the columns, but that's only been the case when you are putting values into all the columns in the defined column order. But if you're not sure of the column order, it's always best to specify the columns. So to do that, I'm just going to specify the columns for my table in the bracket. Let me do first with specifying certain columns and not some columns. So I'll just drag and drop. So my column serial number, surname, first name. So the null values, I can keep specifying values into those columns. But the not null, I have to specify values. Okay, so this other two are null, but I have values for this other one. So I can say values Then put the values to in bracket. What's the value I want to put for my serial number? Let's say I want to put 3. Surname. So SQL uses single quote to specify text. Right, so I have to put my text in single quotes. If I try to put a different type of data into a text value, it will not accept it. So let's say for first name now I'm putting 0. I want us to see together so we see the mistake. So for gender, I can put female. If I try to execute this now, it will fail and you will see the error. Oh, so okay, so it converted this on default into a text. Okay, I have 0 as surname, converted it into a text. Okay, so if I try to insert into the table without specifying the compulsory columns, I'm going to have an error. So I've taken out first name column and I'm taking out the values for it. So if I try to run this, it will show me now that it cannot insert null value into first name. So I need to specify first name column, right? So these are various ways you can use the insert method. If I try to do an insert without specifying the columns, you see I've commented on the column, so I've not specified the column. I'm just saying insert into table, then the table names, I mean the values. This would also come up with an error, right? It will say the number of values does not match the table definition. If I'm using this method, I need to give values for all my columns. So you can see various ways of using the insert script, various flexible ways of using the insert script as against using the click method, right? So I think we need to, let me see, some other SQL statements I'm yet to touch on. Okay, we've tried the alter table and the drop table. Okay, so let's do the truncate and the delete drop table, right? So for drop, okay,
Which one? Oh,
I'll go on, please.
that the last. Okay, yeah. Insert data into table. You said we only did for the same initials. We omitted them.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Are breaking. The line is breaking.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you clearly now.
Okay, I said inserting data into our table from the query. Insert into the table, which is customers. Look at the details of the table. I thought I was supposed to take it, but it's like it's only serial number, surname, and gender that you wrote down here.
Great, good question. Now, for the columns that are null, that can accept null, like your initials, like your age, like your address, right? If I don't want to insert values into them, then I may not need to specify their column names here. Do you understand? So if I don't specify their column names and I don't give values to them, it will still accept it. But if I want to put values into them, so a complete insert table would be something like insert into then the table, then I specify all the columns. So I can choose to insert values into all the columns, and I can choose to put into some of the columns, but I must make sure I'm not leaving out the columns that are not null. So I can specify all the columns. I can do it to say, okay, insert values into all my columns. I was just trying to explain different ways that you can do insert.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so right, so this way now I've specified all my columns and then values. I also need to specify all all corresponding values. So let's say for serial number I have 5 or 4. I don't really like the way I'm entering serial number, but just for today, tomorrow I'm going to show us how to define that column to ensure that it automatically takes a serial number value. I've actually showed us, but we couldn't save it. So we will not be able to save using that method except to write it on script. So save for then surname. Okay, so I also noticed that it can accept your string in your values without putting in quotes, but it's always best practice that you put in quotes to indicate that is a string value. So I'm specifying data for all my values, right? Then yeah, close bracket. So once I execute this, it would execute the same way as the other insert script executed. Okay, so all the data that we have been inserting using insert script, if we go to our table, we are going to find them. So right click, edit, you can find your data there. Okay, so where is the Fatima data I just inserted? Telcom DB has executed. Oh, okay. So if I try to execute it again, you can see my primary key constraint is working, saying that this data already exists and it cannot duplicate. So I'm going to refresh on my table and then I would view. Customers table, Telcom DB. I'm in the right DB. I'm not seeing the data. That's why I'm doing this all over again. Oh, better. It's there. So you can see your data, all the data that we've been inserting. You can see them in your tables as well, inserted. So if you would like to update on the table, you can update them from edit here, right? You can see I'm updating my values. But for some reasons, you might just want to update them using a script. So let me show us how to use the update statement to update the value for this guy using a script. So go back to our script and say update table. So the script for updating values in the table is just simply update table, then specify the table name. In this case is customers, right? Then the column for which you want to update, you say set the column name. I want to actually update on the address column, right, to the value you want it to be. Um, okay, so I can't short form that way. So let's put it complete. Okay, so let's say this is the address that I want it to be. Now there's something sensitive about using the update column. If incorrect, okay, so set column. So what am I missing? Update table. Let's check the syntax to be sure. Okay, let's run it and see what error it gives us. So update table, set update table, table name, set column, then specify the column name, and then to the value should be, right? Now, if I run this update this way, it's going to update for all my values, right? So I would rather specify a condition. I'm going to explain conditions, different types of conditions to us tomorrow, but let's just see how to set a condition here. So I want to set the address for a particular user. So that's for this particular record. And I would need to look for something unique to identify the record. I can use serial number. So I'll say set where serial number equals to 4. Right, so when I click to execute this, oh, okay, there shouldn't be table. It should be update, then table name. So it says incorrect syntax, net keyword table. So update, then table name, set column to the given value and specify a condition. So execute, right, you can see it's done successfully. So if I come to my customers and I click to see the table, because I still have this table opened, that's why it's not updating. So I'm going to close wherever I have the table open. Then, okay, so you can see that the value has changed based on my update script on that table.
Yes.
And of course, I can choose to update from here, which is a simpler method, or using my script. Yeah, you wanted to ask a question?
No, not a question.
Okay, right. So these are different ways of using statements in SQL. You can see that all the statements we've used today can also be done without writing scripts. But as you continue to write more scripts, and which we'll practice tomorrow, as we continue to write much more complex scripts, then you will see that there are certain things that you can't do easily by just clicking and putting values. You need to understand the concept of SQL statements, the syntaxes, and then how to manipulate your data objects and data by writing scripts. So today we've created some SQL data definition statements like our create, alter, and oh, okay, drop. So drop is just to simply delete the database object. Okay, so let's create another database object because I don't want to lose this one. So um, let's create another customer table. Let's just call it customer 2 or something. Now, because I have created a customer table before and I want to create a similar customer table, I don't want to rewrite the script or go through trying to create the table and define the columns again. I can simply right click on customer table and say script the creation, generate a creation script for me from that table. So I'll right click and I'll click on script table as create. I can also generate some other SQL script as well from it. I can generate insert of this. So instead of us writing our insert statement, we can come here and say generate and insert two scripts for customers for us on a new query window. You can see it has generated all those our long scripts for us. Right. So insert into specified all the columns in the brackets, then give us um, where you can change the values on to put in. So here I can then change and say, okay, insert into table, specify value 5 as my this, surname, um, so you can see I can also I can do perform different things in SQL using different methods, but the best method to always know how to do is writing SQL statements, because writing SQL statements will help you to be able to manipulate your scripts in various ways that you would want to do so. Okay, so if I execute this now, it should run. We are going to remove all of this and write it in a proper way. Oops. Okay, so we're almost done. So when you generate the script this way, all you just need to do is to change the values and put in your own correct values. This way too helps you to understand the syntax that you need for writing SQL scripts in case you don't have all of those syntax all by hand. Okay, so I'm going to execute this now, and invalid column impatience, serial number, surname, first name, serial number, surname, first name, initials, age. Oh, sorry, gender, serial number, surname, first name, initials, gender, age, address. Okay, invalid column name. I will listen. Why is this saying that the column name? Insert into values, into tables, columns, then
There's a space
values.
for that. I want to see.
There's a what?
space before the Awolusi. Could that be the error?
I didn't get that. Well, let me see. Maybe if I put in quotes like this, then it will be fine. Okay, I think it was the quote. Yeah, but I was expecting that to accept it without the quote. So, it's just the same syntax. It's just that you didn't have to write all the script from the beginning by ourselves. We could just generate the script and then change the values. Right, so insert into your table your column names, then your values, specify the values. So let's go back to our script that we're writing here. And we were trying to generate another table which we want to drop. So do script table as create a new query window. Okay, beautiful. So you can see it as script, our creation table for us. I just want to create a duplicate table, so I didn't want to create all over again by myself. If I try to execute this command, that I should create the same table that is existing, it will come back with an error. Of course, saying that there is already an object named customers, right? So I can't create the same table. So I want to create a duplicate. So the sensible thing to do is to give a unique name. So I want to create a table called customers new table with the same columns and column definition. So I've given it a new name. So I'll just say execute, and you can see my table has been executed successfully. So now if I refresh on my tables, I would see that I have the two tables. So you can see customers table, new table. But of course, new table will not have any data in it because I just created it as an empty table. So you can see it's empty, but this other one has data in it. Okay, so I want to show us how to actually drop a table. So, okay, now that we have table in it, I want to show us drop and truncate. So let me also insert the values from customers into customer new table. To do that as well, I can use the same similar methods. So I'll say script table as insert. Okay, now I wanted insert values. Okay, I don't have that here. Okay, I would have shown us another method, but I want to leave that for another class. So for tomorrow's class rather. So this table that we have created, if we want to delete it, we simply use the drop command. Delete table using drop command or drop statement. Okay, so to do that, you simply use the command or the syntax drop table, then specify the table name. So if I do this, it will delete the table and any existing records in the table. So command executed successfully. If I refresh, I won't find my table anymore. Table is gone. Now there's a difference between drop and truncate, right? If I say truncate table, I'm going to use truncate table on customers table. Remember, customers table has table information, it has data in it. So if I say truncate table is simply going to remove all the records within the table, but my table will still remain. So to delete all the records in my table, I can use either the delete or the truncate statement to remove records in my table. So let's do the delete first. Delete or truncate statement. So if I use the delete statement, I'll say delete from, then I'll specify the table, right? Then if I specify it this way, it will remove all the values within my table, all the records within my table. But I want to specify a condition to it. So I can say delete from the table, right, where serial number ID, I want to remove a particular record is less than 3. So I want to remove the first 2 records. Yeah, so if I execute this now, it would work, right? And you can see 2 rows affected. So my first 2 records have been deleted. So if we call this up, you see that you can't find records 1 and 2 anymore. You can only find the list 3, 4, 5. Right, so you can specify the delete with a condition, but you can't specify truncate with condition. So the difference between delete and truncate is you can specify delete with condition, you can specify truncate with condition. So if we say truncate table, then specify the table name. Yeah, when we execute this, it will tell you command executed successfully. When you go to your table, close and reopen. When you go to your table, you won't find any data there anymore. So truncate table would actually take out all the data, but it will leave your data object. Right, that's it will leave your table. But if you then say drop table, table name. So drop table will take out your table and the data values in it, even if there's any in it. So drop table command will delete your table completely. So it should tell me table not found. You can see invalid object name customers table because you have dropped or you have deleted the table. So if I refresh now, I wouldn't find the table anymore. So the table and the data, everything that we created, we have dropped it using the drop table command. So we are going to stop here today, and then tomorrow we'll continue with SQL statements. These are founding blocks of SQL statements, and I'm happy we're able to treat everything today, and we're also able to see how to import data into our SQL DB. So today we've treated data definition statements in SQL, the create table or DB, then the alter on table or DB, and the drop on table or DB. So drop, create, and alter are data definition statements, because sometimes you might have that in an exam or something. Then, and data definition statements work on database objects, while you have the data manipulation statements that work on manipulating data within database objects. And of course, we have seen different ways in which we have manipulated data, using insert to put in data values into our tables, using updates to change our data values, using delete to remove certain data values, right, and update as well. What we have not done today is select statements. I purposely left select statements for the next class because select is most often used for data manipulation and retrieval. And um, we would see various ways of using select statements and expanding on it to retrieving data from our database. So tomorrow, let's come in quickly and would do most of the practicals tomorrow on select statement. I'm going to send us this script file and we can practice on our database and the data we have imported into our database. So we are going to stop here now and we'll continue in the next class. Thank you.